Welcome back to Squawk Box. 2 months before Elliott Management announced a $2.5 billion stake in SoftBank, a Reuters reporter penned this piece. Wanted bold activist to take on Masayoshi Son. He suggested an activist investor with plenty of cash and the stomach for a fight, like Dan Loeb's Third Point or Paul Singer's Elliott Management, could be in for the trade of a lifetime. Joining us now is that very reporter who called for all of this and called it right. Liam Proud has every reason to be proud this morning. Reporter for Reuters BreakingViews. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Angie. Thank you very much.
So walk us through your thinking, and I'm perhaps even more curious about after you penned the piece whether you got a call from anybody at Elliott.
Well, basically there's two reasons I thought this was likely to happen. The first is governance. This company, SoftBank, is run essentially by one person, Masayoshi Son. He's got a big stake in the company. He tends to make investment decisions based on his kind of gut instinct. He talks about liking to feel the force, like some kind of Jedi in Star Wars. And that's not typically the kind of thing that an activist likes to see. You like to see kind of accountability and a kind of broad suite of opinions being taken in. And then the other thing was just the valuation. You look at this thing, it's worth somewhere between $200 billion, $300 billion, depending on how you count it, but the stock market thinks it's worth $90 billion.
So did anybody at Elliott call you after you wrote this piece?
I'm not supposed to talk about who I've spoken to on various kind of, on record, off record, but we're constantly in conversation with sources around this.
Sounds like somebody did call him. So walk us through, what do you think happens next in terms of the process, if there is one, and what really can happen here?
So I think the process has already started. My information is that they've been having conversations for some months before this came public, and that they've actually been quite friendly conversations. If you look at the two things that Elliott is calling for, it's a big stock buyback. Masayoshi Son has done that in the past. He did about a $5.5 billion buyback last year, and some governance changes, which don't involve him giving up that much power. It's basically just being a bit more clear, a bit more transparent with the stuff in the Vision Fund. How are you valuing that stuff? How did you get to those conclusions? And I think you could probably come to an agreement on those basic principles.
Liam, let's talk about the Vision Fund, and actually let's talk about the second Vision Fund, because there are new reports out that that fund is more troubled than ever, may even come in at half the price that they were even looking for, and that most of that money would come from SoftBank.
Yeah, I think that seemed likely for a while now. They put out this statement around the middle of last year saying they were looking for a $108 billion sequel to the first Vision Fund. But the details around how they were going to get there were pretty scarce. We tried to run the numbers a few times based on, they've named this bank, how much could they afford to give up, and we couldn't get anywhere near the big numbers. So it's not altogether surprising, but it doesn't make it any less embarrassing that they don't seem like they're going to close that scale of fund.
And what's the relationship right now between Masayoshi Son and MBS in Saudi Arabia, given that that is so much of the money?
Yeah, that's the crucial question, but it's very hard to tell. You can speak to people around both companies and get an idea of how they're thinking about it. But basically, this is two very powerful guys. You can say, lots of reports come out saying people close to the public investment fund, the Saudi fund, that they're minded not to invest again. But ultimately, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, could just turn around and change that on a dime if he wanted to. This is the kind of power these people have. So it's very hard to get a read unless you're in the room with those two people. We
got to go. But do you think that founders and other startups are going to still take SoftBank money? And the reason I ask is, I don't know if you saw over the weekend, but Chamath Palihapitiya went on a Twitter tear after the story in the Wall Street Journal about the Mormon church money, which had been secretly created. Actually, he thinks that founders are basically going to have a whole sort of new morality about money and about who they're taking the money from and why they're taking the money. And we've started this conversation it started with the Saudis, frankly, but it felt sort of like we're sort of at a tipping point where this might actually move somewhere.
I think they'll be okay. One, it doesn't look like they've got any more Saudi money at the moment, and they've spent most of the Saudi money already. So to the extent that was going to be a problem, it might be less of a problem. But second of all, they've got the biggest fund in the world. If you're a startup founder and you think this is going to be a kind of winner-takes-all market that you're in, you know, if you have more money, you can outspend your competitors. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that's their edge. So as long as they've got loads of cash, they should be able to find targets, I think.
Right.